Howdy doody dudes and dudettes. Wow, that was great. I'm amazing at my job. Whew. This is daily number 570 part 3. We're looking at Swarm Host Viper. We've looked at it in some, I would call them reasonable circumstances in part 2. A game where things kind of slip and KatZ pulls it together. And another game where KatZ is dominating start to finish. But most importantly, in both of these games, we still see the through line of getting to the Swarm Host Viper composition, how it works, and how he doesn't deviate and get over eager and just abandon ship and go all in. So let's hop into this game where the opponent ZvP goes for really fast tempests. So as we've been doing in the other games, hit the play button. As we've been doing in the other games, let's think about how KatZ wiggles and worms his way through a mid-game, using largely lings, infestors, and hydras to stay alive. And then how he's going to utilize those units to apply a little bit of pressure. This game, one thing I wanted to focus a little bit more on is how KatZ is expanding behind. I've been focusing a lot on the battles that have been going on, but let's focus a little bit more on expansions, because that's another tool in our belt that we can utilize against problems that we're having. So KatZ actually goes one base. Two base. And goes for an extractor right away because his opponent is one basing. There we go. Now I get it correctly. So, KatZ staying home, staying défensivement. He's up against a sort of typical one-gate expand with interestingly no pressure. So KatZ just right away goes for a layer. Doesn't even take a third yet. Just layers it up. Yes, he does. 6-minute layer. Early second gas. Going for geysers 3 and 4 a little bit later. Looks like now. And then also taking a third base. KatZ has yet to receive any pressure from the front, from the opponent. Generally, it will be around 8 to 9 minutes before anything really shows up. So KatZ is just getting all his goody goodness up. And yet again, we see some infestation pit action going on. We see that Zergling speed has been completed. We see, again, KatZ going, oh, you're not attacking me. You must be doing something a little bit passive. So I guess I'm just going to go straight into the Swarm Host play. I'm going to get a couple of infestors up there, but basically drone, Swarm Hosts, da usual. So here's where things get a little bit odd from the opponent, ZvP, that I want to read as Quizzle. He goes Fleet Beacon right away. Not really even having any knowledge of what his opponent is doing, because he's going to go Tempests. Now, Tempests seem like a very sensible option, because we can outrange the Swarm Hosts early. It's almost impossible for the opponent to have... it's almost possible for Zerg to have a really great anti-air versus Tempests while going a lot of Swarm Hosts, if it's in the early game. Late game, it's easy for Zerg to have everything, because Zerg's economy is doing great. Some kind of funny... heavy focus on this one Swarm Host. This is just like a bunch of sad high school guys trying to invite the same single girl to prom. No, pick me, no, pick me. Oh, it's just too much focus on it. So the Hydra Den still comes up. KatZ is starting to identify, okay, wow, there's some real pressures coming up here. And gets a good sense of that there's a ground army here as well. Sensible to go for a Hydralisk Den in this position, because the only real big threats that can be coming from a Protoss are, like, air and ground. Or excuse me, I should say air and gateway units. There's no real threat of Colossus or High Templar in this position. So the Hydralisks are a very intelligent defensive tool. So see, we started going for our Swarm Host, and then we went, oh, he's going for a lot of Phoenixes, man. This guy's crazy. Let me get some Hydralisks up. Let me get some Infestors up to track those down. Really similar to the game we watched on Akalon Wastes in Part 1. But fantastic. We're starting to stabilize a little bit. We're starting to stabilize. Alright, cool. Let's go back to the Swarm Host production that we see up here. We've actually spotted the Tempests. I didn't show that, but there's a couple units that just died there that spotted the Tempests. So, no hive yet. No big deal. We can actually begin the setup for this push earlier on. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a completely reasonable tool. We're getting the Hydra speed. We have Hydra range more important than Hydra speed. Why? Because swarm hosts are stationary. They have no speed. So what we really want are good ranged units to help deal extra damage in conjunction with the swarm hosts. What we don't want are speedy hydras that run up and get themselves killed. We're still basing everything around these swarm hosts. So yeah, enduring locust, the upgrade, getting this speed, and an expansion, and the hive. So great, we're applying pressure, we're trying to pick away at things. Tempest count is not particularly high from MVP yet. Overseer just in case. Money remains high for KatZ, and you see that? Drones also being added in. He's at 63 drones. A lot of drones being added. 2 spires for upgrades, but also to get things like corruptors, should we need them. Another expand going up. Continued monitoring of expansions. And these tempests take a lot of gas, so we're largely going to be up against the zealots. And look at KatZ just making himself a ton of drones. A couple spores up at these bases. And now we start to see why a couple of infestors and hydras with range work so amazingly with this composition. Against basic ground armies, we are just rocking the house, man. We are just smoking his face. Look at that unit's lost tab. Ooh, it's about to get evened up. Smoking his face? We're smoking his face, man. We're rolling it up, lighting it, and taking a long drag on his face. But at this point in time, MVP is really starting to make some serious headway in this exchange. And it seems like we are not in good position. These tempests are very easy to micro backwards, and their stupid range is really evening up this little tablet. Our Vipers are showing up a little bit late to the party. But this queen massing, a way to keep our gas out of the anti-air equation. Some repeated transfuses, still kind of struggling. But all this is actually okay, because while this push has been going on, and while MVP does have way more tempests than seem reasonable, we've taken ourselves a 5th base, we've taken ourselves a 4th base, we have an amazing economy. So KatZ can just fall back on an intuitive type of play. I'm going to make a hell of a lot of corruptors because he has a whole bunch of air units. And I'm also going to make some hydras because he has a whole lot of ground units and air units. And, okay, perfect. This is all made possible by the fact that KatZ has such a sickening economy. So we see corruption steps in, hydras start flooding this. The Tempest can't really kill off the corruptors quickly enough, but the hydras are joining 20 hydraless in production, and hydra laying, okay, great. Drills it right on back. Now the last thing I want to explore in this game is just a really simple but important note. Watch the way that KatZ returns right back to the goal of Swarm Host and Viper. KatZ is taking another base. Alright, cool. He's not going to be too overeager. I think it's an absolutely acceptable time to abandon the original plan and just start really drilling in with Hydra Ultraling. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, to be able to do that correctly, you really have to be damn good. And you have to really know when it's a correct time to abandon. There's nothing wrong. In fact, if the best player in the world was in this position and said, well, I could probably kill him with Ultras, but I'm just going to stick to my plan, I would totally high-five him, because there's no way that can be wrong. So KatZ is maxed in this position, but he's built Vipers. It's a way to replenish the existing army. Or excuse me, not replenish. It's a way to reinforce the existing army and begin stepping more towards the Swarm Host play. As these units begin to die, Swarm Host will be the replenishment goal. Still building a good old wall of spores. Why? Because that's part of the Swarm Host plan. We don't have any Swarm Hosts. We have the defensive structures. That's one of the 3 big pieces. We have the Vipers. That's 2 of the 3 pieces. And then the last piece is the Swarm Hosts. So KatZ continues to take bases, get these expands up. I mean, he's clearly crushed. But look, adding on the Ultraless Cavern. It's another thing that we want. It's another thing that we need. Getting more Vipers. Okay. This is going to allow him to do an aggressive push, but there's always that mindset of, hey, I could pull back and begin going for Vipers. Or, excuse me, I could pull back and begin going for Swarm Hosts. This is going to be really freaking hard to deal with. Especially if you've been stuck on 3 bases for basically the entire game. Now KatZ is finally starting to be able to free up some of his food, and is genuinely hoping to lose units or be in an exchange where he could go back to the Swarm Host thing. However, with this much money, same structure as before. If we think our opponent is going to be really, really high on the gateway units and is going to struggle to get more Robo and Stargate units up, we can just go Ultra Hydra. Still the same plan. Swarm Host Viper at one end of the spectrum and Hydra Ultra at the other. Overwhelming numbers, yeah. And there's the Infestors coming up. And then last but not least, the Swarm Hosts are existing on the other side of this game. Or on the other side of the 30-minute mark as a tool that we would then use if it didn't win. Alright. These games are a little long, but that's fine. Because I like it when the goal for winning... Uh-oh, don't crash. And I think we're okay. I like any strategy where the goal for winning is late on down the road. Because if it's too early up the road, it's very easy to hit the point where you're like, well, I'm still in the game and I have no clue what to do. Last game I wanted to see... What was the last game I wanted to watch? Game between KatZ and Swag Surgeon. I'm going to X8 this really hard. The one thing that weirdly this strategy will struggle with is one of the most standard mixtures, just a lot of Gateway plus Colossus and some Archons in there. Just true brunt aggression, battering down weak points. Lot of Gateway units backed up by the Colossus means that KatZ is going to have huge sections of his line, of his attack line, just decimated by this usual exchange, which is going to force KatZ to go for Hydra Ultra, which is going to delay the Swarm Host push. So I'm going to just kind of note what's happening in this game without going into too much detail. Swarm Surgeon opens up with some air, goes for an early third base, but also kind of follows it up with the Colossus tech. KatZ does what we've been seeing him do many games in a row, get Hydras and a couple Infestors to stay alive. And there they are. And then just go mass drone expand to kill all this shiz off. Now it's going to be going down with Swag Surgeon as he says, "What you doing to me, bro?" And oh, is KatZ ever going to show him? Oh me gosh. This is also another reason why I think that Hydras are an important piece to this puzzle. So there's KatZ going for the Ultralisk Cavern. We haven't actually seen a Swarm Host get started yet. It's just all Ling, Viper, Hydra. But that's fine. What KatZ is going to do is kind of what we were talking about last game. He's going to begin pushing, and as he begins losing units, he will replenish them with the ever-awesome Swarm Hosts. So there's those Templar in there to do all the annoying feedback and... Come on, engagement, come on. We've X8'd to the 16-minute mark. Excellent. I will look at this uninteresting piece of creep on ×8 speed so that we can get to an interesting part. Ah, cool. Yep, here's the setup for spines. And we see our very first Swarm Host coming up. Yes! Alright, speeding it up. Swag Surgeon. If we look at his base, he has this very large gateway emphasis. This will be the thing that this strategy will struggle with the most. In fact, I can go to this Structures tab to show 6 gateways going to be going up to, or excuse me, 8 gateways going to be going up to 14. We have 1 Robo, and we have a couple, I guess I'd say bonus structures that will not actually be used so much. So KatZ has himself a nice mid-game defense. Weirdly, yes, I am going to call this the mid-game. With Banelings, Spines, some nice pulls, etc. And now the big pushing begins. Come on. Oh god, please. I really wish I could just zoom ahead to like the 25-minute mark in this game. I guess technically I could. I guess I should utilize some of those new features, like the take command that everyone is still gonna call resume from replay. So there's some nice pulls, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about this part. 5 swarm hosts. Come on. Come on, get there. Get the swarm host army up. Begin the pushing. Plus, plus, plus speed. Ah. Yeah. I will finally now pause at the what now, bro moment to note, after 22 minutes, finally ROOTCatZ has gotten his swarm host viper thing going. This is one of the longest wormings out of the way and final returns to the swarm host viper that I've been talking about all daily long. But he still got there. And when I say he still got there, I don't mean like, phew, he got there, that's good, right? You arrived at the party 15 minutes before it closed, at least you still got there. No, what I mean is that the strategy all along was to get there. And KATZ did not misstep at any point. It just took him a long time to get there. And that is why I always emphasize, as long as you have a really good long-term plan, you always kind of know where you need to be going. At every step of the way, we can understand why he built so many hydras, or why he built the spines, and why he built those other things. But here we have these issues with parts of the defensive line getting busted. Hydra, spine crawler, very good at just dealing damage, and we're replacing lost units with swarm hosts. It was a little hard to get this huge setup going. We can't really be aggressive. This is one of the reasons why we're not devoting to a lot of Hydra Ultra. The reason KATZ is not really making headways is because he hasn't quite gotten the setup that he wants, but that's fine. He's still working his way towards there with continued creep spread, continued spine and spore production. KATZ just really wishes he didn't have as much food in these Hydras and Ultras as he did right now. So there comes the Banelings. Finally, an exchange where the Hydras really eat the storm hard. And what do you know? We can replenish with Ultras! And we have 10 swarm hosts up, looking very much like the usual games. But still, we're seeing Swag Surgeon is kind of aware of, wow, you are getting a lot of swarm hosts and Ultras. I will emphasize the Immortal, the Storm, and de-emphasize the Colossus. So that way I can storm through all the things at the front and just murder things at the backside. So here's where I think that some of the difficulty can lie, in the Immortals, all these units shoving forward at the front, the Templar at the back to storm the Locusts, as well as everything else, rather than trying to pick off the Vipers. And this is the final good demonstration of also why Hydras are part of this strat. If you killed off a huge gateway army, and he has Immortals, Air, and some Templars, you can just flood Hydras. The whole issue for KATZ has been this position the entire game. You broke? No, bro. In fact, the gas count is so dang high. And the Infestors are going to play another little critical role here. Just getting these huge lumps of voidrays, make sure the voidrays are not too undeal-withable. We have a nice pack of Hydras. We have 31. Ta-da! And the slow push thusly begins. The unit's loss tab is actually not really favoring KATZ at all. It looks like KATZ is getting frickin' reamed. However, the swarm host push will allow us to begin chipping away at this base. And once we get the swarm host army up, that's when we begin being super hyper economical. So here's the rally. Eventually rallies to just kill off this base. And the more Death Army-esque the Protoss gets, the better the Swarm Host Viper ends up doing. So suddenly Protoss has lost his critical center base. Zerg has lost his, but easily has control. And now we finally hit the composition the KATZ was looking for. Swarm Host, Viper, with some Infestors and some Hydras. And this starts getting super even. So this is kind of what I mean by potential weaknesses in there, that it's a little bit hard to deal with a lot of these sorts of frontal assaults. Until you start to get a lot of Infestors in there, start to get a lot of Hydras to spread themselves out. Units lost tab. Evening up. It's evening up. Isn't this cool? I would go ahead and say that I'm going to start taking questions as we're seeing this slow push commence. If you look at the gas count for KatZ, he has plenty of gas should he need to go back to mining these minerals and want to build more power tech units. He has all the gas in the world he could ever need. Doesn't matter that you got to do them skill shots to get the air units going. In fact, a lot of these hydras are simply shooting down interceptors. And as we've noted before, if for some reason it's really obvious that he has almost no ground units and almost all air units, there's nothing wrong with just flooding with a bunch of corruptors. And if he's low on gateway units, flood ultras. Alright. And, yeah. And amazingly, KatZ wins with way more money in the bank. Swag Surgeon has like no money in the bank. And not even really a good position. Can't deal with the swarms. And look, KatZ loses a little longer. Man. Whoo! I wish those games were like, I could run them like 60% faster. Vejur says, Day 9, what kind of game plan could Protoss use to deflect this Zerg long-term plan? I honestly think it's to try to start hitting a lot of different places at once, and to be willing to do these huge barrel-the-front type plays where you just assault it head-on. Some of the best gains I've seen Protoss players do are when they don't try to be cheeky and just pick stuff off, when they just like hit through. I think keeping the Templar in the back to storm the Locusts, and having Immortals at the front line to pick off the Swarm hosts is really, really key. I think that is super important. SamUser1234 says, would a few Corruptors mixed into this composition make it more effective against heavy Tempest Colossus in the late game? I actually think the opposite, that really getting Corruptors is not as good as getting more Swarm hosts, because if he tries to poach forward with just air units, like with no ground support, you're just going to use your Vipers to pull it into the Spore Crawlers and kill it. What would cause that to go awry if Colossus or Templar were there to snipe the Vipers or to get up to the Swarm hosts? So you actually want to dominate on the ground control. If you go for the Corruptors, sure, you can maybe kill off those things faster, but you're not trying to kill them off fast. You're trying to actually let battles be long, because the longer a battle happens, the more free locusts were spawned, the more value you can get out of them. So you actually want the battles to kind of extend out and be long, and then just use your Vipers to just pick off free units there. Day 9, who is your favorite supernatural character? Asked by Jarnatan. Dean. I would kiss that man on the mouth. He is beautiful. Let's see here. Oh, we have FXO Theory. Yeah! Woohoo! Yes! He actually says, what do you think was the biggest problem with my composition in the very late game versus KatZ army? Any significant additions I could make? An interesting proposition. What do I think about that? I think the most notable thing is less composition and just more general aggression. KatZ has to spend... The Zerg does have to spend so much money building all these defensive structures that just drilling certain parts aggressively and replenishing with... I'm almost of the opinion that fewer air units is better. Maybe a couple tempests is good, but mainly going down the robo gateway route to really just slam the Zerg hard. I think that limited Warp Prism Harass is good, because Zerg's in a position where he is, unless he builds a ton of Spine Crawlers everywhere, he's vulnerable to those sort of warp-in attacks. So if you just get some of the Infestors out of position, or some of the other units out of position, and then just really drill hard and try to win by having massive rewarp and follow-ups, I think that was it. I'm just not a fan of the transition to big late-game units like Colossus tempests, carriers, voidrays. I just don't think it's that good against this. Those are my thoughts. Because I was noticing in that game, Sir Theory, there were a lot of Stargates back in the main and not a lot of gateways. So when that first big drill happened in the center, I think it's a real natural Protoss instinct to go, oh, okay, well, I got an edge. Now I have an extra base up. I'm just going to get my army of death. But Zerg is actually the one with the army of death, and it's the big goal to apply pressure to him. And actually in this game, I think Swag Surgeon could have had a lot of more success by not going for the Stargate units. That is my answer, I think. And also, Theory, I can play quite well. This thing seems really damn difficult to deal with. Let's take 2 more questions. From Mark's #1 fan. Would this work on big maps? Absolutely, yeah. There's a replay I didn't show of KatZ doing it very effectively on Whirlwind. It just requires a lot of good scouting, a lot of spines, and a lot of sort of expanding along where you're attacking. But I mean, just, yeah, works great. Let's take one more thing. All right, from Ricer Car SC. Notice Immortal Sentries are very common in ZvP. How do you think Zerg should hold off this kind of death push if he is going for this late game setup? How would Zerg have to deviate from the ultimate late game plan? A very reasonable question, because there are things like the Immortal Sentry All-In that a lot of Zerg players have an answer to, but it's often in the form of Ling Roach or Ling and Spines to delay until Hydras pop out. If those sorts of things do happen, still just kind of say, okay, well, what is the defense that I think I need to hold this off? Can I list off all the possible ways to defend against an Immortal Sentry All-In? What are the best ones of this set that work with this late game plan? A Ling Hydra defense is going to work a lot better with this late game plan. A Ling Roach defense is not going to work as good as this late game plan. In that sort of circumstance, I would still focus on doing something like, okay, once I have held it off with Ling Roach, I'm going to just drone up, get Hydras, because those are so good at defending the follow-up Immortal Sentry pushes, like the Immortal Sentry All-In after the initial Immortal Sentry All-In fails. Doing that, and then playing it out almost as though the Immortal Sentry All-In didn't happen. As an example, we saw in the game between KatZ and Grey Warden on Daybreak, we saw KatZ go for 4 hatch, get up a Roach Warren and a bunch of Queens, because he needed to hold off air, he needed to hold off any sort of early pressure. And then once he saw, okay, no, I've held off the attacks, all right, cool, now I'm just going to go layer Hydra and just pretend that that early game didn't happen. That's actually okay. The general thing I try to remind myself of is the more aggressive a player was with early game attacking, the worse off his late game plan will be. So I can be really thrown off my late game plan and come back to it in a slow fashion. And that's fine, because he is going to be equally slow. Bam! Done with the daily. Really enjoyed that. Enormous shout out to ROOTCatZ and of course Root Gaming for providing those replays. I am now going to get ready for the After Hours Gaming League semifinals. So if you'd like, stay tuned, because IBM is going up against Microsoft. I don't know who wins, but whoever does will go on to face Amazon in the Grand Damn Finals. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow for the daily. See you Friday for subscriber events.